morning, everybody. We'd like to get started for our Thursday, November 8th work session. Supervisor Laura Jen Smith had some personal matters to take care of this morning. She'll be joining us hopefully a little bit later on into the session. If we could all rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. Master of Ceremonies, Councilman Wooten, would you please lead us?
Sure will. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And for Jeffrey.
Remember we used to sing My Country Tis of Thee in school?
True.
Right?
What's
Yeah,
that?
Riverhead, we sang My Country Tis of Thee right after.
Okay. It looks like we will start off with the town board liaisons update. From what I understand, it was discovered that the town historian does not have a liaison associated to their office, so, I'm understanding you might be interested in that.
Sure, yes.
And Laura had spoken to you about it, so I think Jody is, Councilwoman Giglio is gonna be our liaison to the town historian's office, which is quite an interesting office, I must say.
Yeah, it is. We're very thankful for Georgette. She can put her hands on everything, even though, you know, she's got things all over the place.
It's interesting, if you ever get a chance, you should stop down and just take a peruse through her office, cause
Yeah.
it's amazing some of the history that's there that you're just not aware of, and you're not sure that it's even been kept for so many years, but
Right, and
she's
she's
got a
in
wealth
the-
of information.
In the
there.
refurbished East Lawn building.
Yes.
And not only that, but you know, people do reach out to her all the time, and people don't realize that, if they have a question, or if they want some lineage, or if they want something about, and she'll research it for you and get back to you, you know, it might take a week or two or three, but she'll get back to you with all the information you want.
And a lot of times, she doesn't even have to research, she'll tell it right off the top
Yeah.
of her head, which I'm really amazed about
Yes.
her memory that she has. Okay, so we're glad to have that. Moving on to item number 2.
I like how fast she runs through this agenda, it's very nice.
Mr. Rothar, I think you're gonna come up with a report on Total Technology with some,
Representatives.
By the way, I like when Georgette came in costume.
she does have all of it.
Oyez, oyez.
Eerie,
Yeah,
eerie.
yeah,
Oyez, oyez.
Good morning, all.
What do you
yeah.
want?
Good morning.
Good morning, good morning.
Good morning.
How are you?
Good.
Good morning. Out of my office. No, you won't.
I got it here.
Gentlemen, if we could just have you state your name and your affiliation, please, for the record and for our audience on TV.
I'm Paul Navola, Senior Network Engineer with Total Technology Solutions.
Chris Repetti, Chief Technology Officer of Total Technologies.
Okay.
Vin Tedesco, CEO of Total Technologies.
Thank you, gentlemen, for coming this morning. Bill, do you wanna start off and
Sure.
lead into this?
So, Total's, looking at a solution to, take care of a couple of things. The first thing that, we had to look at is the lag that we have at certain times during the day with our IT. So, a couple of other things that, will get solved with their potential solution here is, we have redundancy. We're gonna go into the cloud, that's what they're gonna propose. We'll have redundancy, there's, cybersecurity is gonna be, packaged with that, and, we will have, business continuity, okay? There's two options that we really have, is to purchase a new system where we house the hardware. It's money up front, and then it's always maintaining that, and if we want to increase that, it's costly, not knowing where, where we're going. Right now, we're adding BAS modules and stuff like that, how much, space we're gonna need and memory and all that. By going into the cloud, almost can turn on and turn off as we need more or less,
Lag time is generally because we have a hit of a lot of people trying to use at the same time. And the lag time has been isolated to certain times during the day when the majority of the town employees are on doing their work, correct? Is
yes,
my
and in
understanding?
particular,
And the
we try to run a backup around lunchtime, when at least there's less people on, so we get a half a day worth of backup. One of the things, when we're in the cloud, it's gonna be backed up on a regular basis, so. They'll give you their projection, they will have a proof of concept to make sure what they're looking to do works in our environment before they actually go forward, and I'll leave the rest up to them to give you some details.
I'll start, then we'll get technical guys to get a little more detailed.
So you're at end of life with your network, so not only do you have an issue with the lagging, right, the ability to get to your applications are just too slow for you to operate. But you're also at end of life with the equipment, so there's no support on the, equipment, which is, EMC, which is now owned by Dell. So your choices are to replace and spend a ton of money, throw a bunch of hardware at your existing system and replace all the equipment and spend $750,000. Or you'll get into the cloud, which is gonna give you the ability to grow when necessary and decrease when necessary. Bill said, it's gonna give you security, it's gonna give you redundancy. It's basically where everybody's gonna be one day, just like we're gonna be not driving our cars maybe in 15 years. One day we may be there as well, right? But everybody's going to the cloud, everybody's been talking about the cloud, and you'll hear about, the Amazon cloud, right? You'll hear about the Microsoft cloud, right? It's called Azure. We're recommending a cloud called Neverfail. They're international. The cloud we're gonna utilize for the town, should it work correctly, will be, hosted in, Vegas. They have another center in, Austin. So you're getting the best of all worlds by going to the cloud. You're getting your redundancy, you're getting the ability, while these applications are being enhanced and growing for different, government agencies, they're developing their own cloud. Garden City, for instance, just bought 2 applications, one for the Department of Works and one for the Assessor's Office. They're 2 different applications. They are no longer gonna be hosting in Garden City. Those 2 applications are hosting their own applications on their clouds. So like you do right now for Office Microsoft 365, it's their cloud. So as those developments come to fruition, you're able to decrease your existing cloud as well, because you don't need all that space, if that makes sense.
Yes.
Yes, okay, so you're accomplishing a whole bunch of things. With all of that being said, we still need to do a proof of concept. The reason being is you have 50 different applications running. You got a load of applications running in the town here. We need to test it, make sure that the end user experience gets rid of your issues concerning the lag, first and foremost. And if that all goes well, then we can go forward with, a cloud situation. We have budget numbers, to give you an idea if you'd like to hear them. But for the most part, we really need to prove out that it works correctly. And that could take 8 weeks. And what we really need to do is, if you decide to go forward with this solution, is have your end users sign off and say, hey, the accounting office used the accounting software, it works well, we're happy with it. The assessor's office, so on and so forth, and go down the line and check most of the utilized applications. I will tell you this, that it will be a hybrid situation right off the bat, meaning that you will have to have a small server in place, because there's a couple of applications, your GIS and your CAD, that's just too resource intensive, that will clog up the internet, and you don't need to pay that kind of money for 3 users to use CAD by going out to the cloud. So there may be a couple of applications that we're gonna have to host locally with a small server, not spending $700,000, and as those applications become more cloud-friendly, we can port those over to the cloud as well.
So, how does that work when you have several people using GIS in several buildings?
So, if I may, so the 3 users he's talking about are the ones that are adding value to CAD or to GIS. So
CAD, by the way, is the program that's used at the police department.
No,
Yeah, that's gonna be, that's.
CAD is like a
That is
architectural
engineering.
drawing.
You're
Oh.
thinking dispatch CAD,
Right.
right? That's different. We're talking about a,
It's design.
Like
design CAD.
engineering.
And
Okay.
it's the exact same,
Good. I'm glad I
3
asked.
letters, right?
Okay.
It's not computer-aided dispatch and records management system, that's the police department.
So, the end users that are using, GIS, they're not adding value to it, it's not as resource
Got it.
intensive, so they'll still have a copy which they can go and look, research whatever they're doing. It's generating and making changes to GIS that causes all that. So there'll still be applications that use that, whether it's the assessor or whoever it may be, that you guys are gonna be able to use that again, once a proof of
To
concept. but-
retrieve information, but it's basically read-only, so we wouldn't be adding
Exact-
data to it.
Exactly right.
Right.
Okay, so how many other municipalities are in the cloud?
Almost everybody is on Office 365, which is on the cloud. How many other municipalities, I couldn't give you a number, we have,
Everybody except us.
maybe there's, maybe in part, maybe 10 that we've had. The
Can you
police
name?
department in
We
the town of East Hampton on the cloud for a while.
Okay,
We mentioned Garden City.
Why did East Hampton go off again? You said for a while.
It was the Azure Cloud, it was early on. We actually developed a records management system and a CAD system back in mid-2005, and we put it onto the cloud, but it was, the support we were getting at the time from Microsoft was not very well, so we actually took them off after a couple of years. We
But
weren't happy
that's
with it.
obviously changed and improved.
Yeah, oh yeah, you know, it's there, we don't own that company anymore, we sold that software company off to a company
long-
in California.
how long has Neverfail been in business?
Well, Neverfail has been in business 20 years. They were a company previously named Artisan Network, Infrastructure Networks. And then they purchased a company called Neverfail about 5 years ago.
Yeah, it was a backup
And they
solution.
rebranded their entire company to Neverfail.
We have a PowerPoint for you as well, if you'd like to see it about Neverfail.
So we'll just,
You know, it's just an, right.
What, you have tech problems?
Oh, my phone is too small.
Thank you.
If you wanna,
so
would you
to
like to
give
hear
you a
about it
brief
right now?
overview of the company itself.
Yeah.
4,000 plus customers, and they're worldwide at this point. They have data centers here in Europe,
From Australia, I think, in Singapore, and
but
London.
obviously, American data stays in American data centers. There's no crossover.
Well, there's laws against that.
And then the second page shows some of their clients, which are Fortune 1000 clients, some of them of which VMware town currently uses. Their data centers are very strict in what they have to adhere to. So the third page shows you the types of requirements that they're under, with the SSAE type, 16 type, SOC. They're HIPAA compliant, they're SOC compliant, they're PCI compliant. Their data centers they have armed guards, biometric readers, fire suppression. It's a very impressive data center. They offer a 100% guarantee on uptime. It's a financially backed SLA. All the hardware is maintained by Neverfail staff. It's always up to date, it's patched, it's replaced as needed. And they have SLAs on the different types of failures that may occur to a piece of hardware. The next page is just a brief overview of the actual data center itself.
Wow.
They're a tier 4 data center, actually going to a tier 5. And the next page describes what, 2 pages from there, describes what they have to go through. So the Uptime Institute handles the certification process for data centers. There's tier 1, 2, 3, 4, and a new one that came out was 5. And they're the ones responsible for,
It's amazing.
It is, isn't it? Should we go
for
take a look?
maintaining the
Giant server
certification.
warehouse.
Yeah, that's what it is.
That's all it is.
What it is.
Right.
So you look at Facebook or, they're in these huge warehouses, and it's just tons of storage, tons of compute, heating, power. The data center itself is a
What the original computer looked like way back.
Yeah.
That size, that's what,
About that size.
so they needed to get to the moon.
That's exactly right.
So they have separate cooling, they have separate power, they have, even the roof structure, it's a dual roof structure with no penetrations, so there's no water, it can sustain 200-mile-an-hour winds.
And they back up as well, I'm sure.
They back up all over.
I wouldn't wanna see that PSEG bill.
Probably a lot less expensive in Vegas than it is here.
Right.
So,
They just do it with solar, it's all solar.
Yeah.
No, I'm joking, yes, could draw enough power from
But
the sun
that
to do
wouldn't
that.
be, I wouldn't be surprised if it was,
Yeah.
considering the
You would
climate.
think there'd be a use of it.
Yeah.
To some degree, there probably is, but it's probably gonna, compared to what they draw off of,
Mm.
okay.
So the concept that we're proposing is instead of replacing your on-site hardware, is taking those services, move them to a cloud, and to deliver the applications to the end user in a slightly different fashion than they're currently used to. Instead of turning on a computer, they get a desktop from VMware, they would just need a thin client with a browser. They can go to a website, which is what that next page shows, is the end user portal, and applications are assigned on a group level basis, so accounting gets one set of applications, assessor gets another set. There's no crossover in the ability to see other people's applications or data. Another option is to make it more like a desktop experience. So we can install what we call workspaces, and it resides on their start menu. So you click on the start button, you go to the folder that says workspaces, and you'll have your applications, Adobe Acrobat, Word, Excel, and so forth.
I'm sorry, Paul. So the end user has a choice on what they wanna see. So you can see this page, the web portal, or the desktop. So that's a choice to the end user. What are they more comfortable with? What's easier for them to use? But from an administrative perspective, how easy is it to deploy to a department? This is what you get, this is it. You don't get to go into that department's software. You don't even know it's there. So from a security perspective within the town itself, amongst the employees, you get what you're supposed to get, you work on what you're supposed to work on, it's done. That's,
It's all logged too, everything, from where they came from to what application they used at what time, and they're all, you can pull those within reports for any one user or any application.
I sort of like that.
It's completely audited.
So the switches that we recently just spent a lot of money on and putting in so that we could support the VMware, are those switches still adequate enough for this program for Never Fail?
Yeah, you're delivering its internet at this point, so, and that's part of what I suppose the proof of concept will kind of eke out, but it's really, you're delivering them, from the internet. So the switches that are here should be adequate for what,
brand new.
yeah, they're not,
Yeah, I don't see an issue with
you're
that.
still delivering, I don't see a problem.
That's
That's
just
good
really the
news.
traffic cop, right?
Right,
Right.
Directing and redirecting the data going out and coming in.
Right.
As opposed to it being hosted now internally at one of the buildings and having several buildings, we're just hosting it in Vegas. We should maybe all take a trip there and make sure this is a.
Okay.
that's a
I'm
great
in.
idea.
Yeah.
Another common
Should we go in April?
Another common question that a lot of people ask is, since our applications and data is in the cloud, well, I have to print here, I have to scan into an application such as Edmunds or whatever it is. The application, it works. The local resources are redirected to the cloud, and you can scan, print, fax, whatever your normal daily functions are, while this resides in that cloud. So that's a
So
non-issue.
there'll be no hiccup on our end at all.
No, they can even handle older devices that use COM ports. Obviously, there's gonna be some tweaking as we go through this process, but it's a fairly stable and reliable.
Familiar with the word COBOL?
I'm sorry.
More of that, my goodness.
That should be worth some money though, like a classic car gets more valuable as it gets older.
Yeah.
I think if we auction off that COBOL system, we should,
Yeah, but our COBOL system is that rusty car
I
in the garage.
know.
We're
It's not
more
the
of a
one
scrap
that's
than it is.
restored and.
One tire sunk into the asphalt.
We just had our
Couple
30th
of blocks.
anniversary last month, 30 years in business, and so we had it in Huntington, venue next to the farm. Real quick, you mentioned the size of computers from years ago. So we had a little, our speeches, we wanted to show what kind of computers are out there 30 years ago, so we actually had to buy it. We had to buy what we threw out, 20 years ago. So a compact portable computer was a suitcase, and
Oh,
we
yeah,
bought it
sure.
online for $35, so we could just have it at the party and show it and say, this is how we started.
Yeah, yeah.
This big, it was a portable.
With the discs.
Right.
That you,
Exactly, 5 1/4, put that in there.
yeah,
and it weighed like, 45 pounds. I'm
There was
here.
no windows.
Right, there
It
was
was
no
all
windows.
DOS.
DOS, 3.1, exactly right.
So right now, we're not really in the cloud. We're still
We are
We
in the cloud
have-
as far as offices.
Limited.
Yeah, we have
Your
Office and we have
emails.
ADP. ADP is in the cloud, so, but that would be one of the things, as Vin had said, in the future, if one of our applications, like Edmunds, if we went into the cloud, we would take it off the server that we're paying Neverfail to manage, and we would go on to, Edmunds cloud. And that would be the same thing if BAS ever turned over and stuff like that, but right now, we would,
It's no different than how much gas do you need, how much heat do you need, how much electric you need. You bring it up or you bring it down as needed, or not. Which is nice, because you're not spending all this money on hardware, and then saying, I need more hardware, or I need less hardware, and continuously rotating and maintaining and
And was it
upgrading.
just like an administration fee with Neverfail, or?
Yeah, it's a monthly
License
fee.
agreement or something?
Mhm.
Monthly fee.
It's a monthly fee. You pay a monthly fee depending on how much you need to utilize.
Is that what it
usage-wise.
is? It goes
Yeah.
by how much data?
Right, exactly, how much storage, how much CPU space, so on and so forth. Again, the difference is you can upgrade or downgrade.
Right.
In a week, in a day, you can say, I need another terabyte, you have a big audit going on, you need X amount of space for a month, you do it. It doesn't
Sometimes you'll
cost-
have an application that needs a little more compute power, and you can give it more RAM, or you can give it more CPU, or you can take away if it's unnecessary. On the fly, you can do that.
Amazing.
I would just ask, gentlemen, if you could speak up a little bit louder, I'm getting a technical, display back there saying, or, these
Voices
microphones are not the best in the world, but,
this is it
Really
yeah, these are
technical, he's
them.
going like this.
This
Just
is your
need
next
you to
project.
speak up so
Can
our
speak
audio
into
is
working,
here.
please.
Drop mics. So some of the benefits of cloud in general is you operate from anywhere. It's available anywhere, anytime. God forbid there's a natural disaster, building's rendered, inoperable, the data center somehow flooded, or something like that. We don't have it here. It's isolated, it's somewhere else, town still functions. All business work is done as usual. Support from any device. You can go home and log in. You can use iPads, Surface, an iPhone. iPhone's a little tough, but you can do it. Reducing operating costs. You don't have the cooling requirements so much from having a data center. You still have some equipment in there, but you don't have to keep it at 70 degrees. The goal was get the town safe, cover some of the disaster and cybersecurity requirements, but also to ease some of the burden on IT with maintaining those images for all the different departments. It functions somewhat the same, but a little bit different, where they're updating a server instead of a desktop image, and then that just gets published out. And there's very little downtime, if any, to the users, because you can take one server offline, keep another one on, and people are still functioning for their daily business.
Oh, I'm all for it, taking, whatever we can make IT's job easier is great.
yeah, they have, I mean, the town has grown, and we have limited resources. It's gonna be enough, even forgetting about the tablets, your desktop and monitors and scanners, just keeping all that stuff going is a job in itself. And that's where we would get to, where this stuff is on the back end, the server that we have, down here, the backup that we have here, the one we have over in 1295, those are all pieces of equipment that have to be maintained and, backed up and everything else, so.
There's maintenance, there's support agreements, there's downtime to maintain the server properly, to install firmware updates, and all that. So all that's done behind the scenes by Neverfail NOC personnel, and no downtime to its end users.
So what's the bottom line?
Well, $1 billion, no. So we're guesstimating for budget purposes here, because we do have to do a POC. The POC is not gonna cost you anything, right? We're gonna come in, we're gonna do the proof of concept, we're gonna make sure that the end users are actually testing it. We're gonna get them to sign off that they're testing it, not to say that they're testing it and then 6 months from now, hey, what'd you guys tell us, there's a lag. It's not gonna happen that way. We're gonna try what we think you need or should have for the future of the town, but if it doesn't cut it, we're not gonna sell it to you. But if in fact it does cut it, number one, you've got workstations that are at least
Well,
5 years
they're-
old.
But the biggest
There's
problem is
zero
there's zero clients, they don't have an operating system.
Correct.
but they're also out of,
They're anywhere from 4 to 6
right,
years
4 to
old.
6 years old, but Microsoft is not gonna be supporting Windows 7 at the end of 2019. So those workstations we're looking at now have to be Windows 10, okay? And that's because of Bill Gates, not because of us, right? So we're looking at upgrading existing workstations, 135 of them, and the small server that we discussed earlier, you're looking at an initial outlay of about $140,000 one time for the next 5 years, because of the workstations. 75,000 of it is in the 135 workstations. And then the never fail cost, again, we're guesstimating, based on what we see and have been working with for the last 6 months, is a cost of $13,500 per month, $162,000 per year. Again, that goes up and down, contingent on usage.
So, how much data do you estimate that we're using now? And that's what the 162 is based on?
It's based on, well, the monthly is based on the resources that would be used, which would be CPU, memory, and, storage capacity and storage. That's being used right now, and I don't have those numbers in front of me, meaning the amount of CPUs and how it was calculated. Can get it, but I do not have it.
But we also quoted a replacement of what you have now, right? To give you an idea, and we went,
$700,000.
yeah, exactly. So, you know, it's one or the other. Continue on, your end of life, your PCs are not gonna be supported at the end of 2019. Your server is also end of life, it is not being supported, they won't even give you a maintenance contract on it.
The same.
Right, you said
Same.
end of life too.
So, you know, the town has to go one way or another, whether it's to the cloud, or just throw a whole bunch more hardware at what you already have, you know, the infrastructure.
And that controller, what do you, now, you've been working hand in hand,
So is Neverfail the,
watcher of the budget, what do you think of the?
have you compared the other companies to
thing
what
about this is we
the
don't have
cost
the
of Neverfail
upfront
is?
Yeah, we have.
Hang on, guys, one at a time.
I can't follow
Need
both.
to expand that or reduce that cost. So if we buy too big of a server now, because we need for what we have now, and then we start taking some of these programs and putting them in the cloud, we don't need that big of a server, but we've already purchased $700,000 worth of equipment up front. If it goes the other way and we need more, then all we do again is turn a switch on what we have and turn it up, as opposed to turning it down, and we don't have to go out and buy another server or a bigger server or anything like that, so. It takes care of more than just this lag, which was the first phase of what we wanted to do with IT. We've always had an issue, even when we did go down, how many days did we lose? Did we lose a minimum of a half a day's worth of work, because it only gets backed up twice a day? Where this stuff is gonna be backed up regularly, so we may lose 15 minutes worth of work. So, so there's all those other things that have to consider, cybersecurity, where the amount of money that, the cloud puts into cybersecurity versus a small town like us, we can't compare to that. So even though, you know, we have things set in place, somebody wanted to get in here, they're gonna get in here. If they wanted to get into the cloud, it's a lot more difficult, so, and that was our phase 2, we had a plan for 3 years of what we needed to do, that was like phase 2, we're kinda taking care of phase 2, we still have the smaller server for GIS, which we still have to make sure we secure. A lot more easy to secure that, or back that up and keep it somewhere else in case it crashes, than it is, you know, everything that we.
If we go with the never fail and go with the cloud system for all of those purposes, and I realize it saves us an outlay of buying stuff that may be antiquated 10 years from now, or be too much a year from now, but I get why you would go to a cloud. What if down the road we find too cost prohibitive, and say, you know what, we're better off just doing a one-shot deal and buying something, what is there an excess to get out of never fail?
No, just like you turn it on and turn it off.
You say we don't need you anymore, we're taking our data back?
Yeah,
Well,
it's not
yeah,
overnight,
but
but
you'd have to-
yeah, I mean, you have to do it, you have to work it backwards at that point. You know what I mean, where you're migrating data up, and it's, you know, you're not turning it up instantly, you're migrating that data up, moving it over, you end up having to then do it in reverse. So we'd have to kind of walk back out of that, it's not an overnight
No, I know.
flip the
that,
switch
yeah.
and you're back, but it is a possibility.
Is this a yearly agreement with never fail, or is it?
No, it's a month to month.
A month,
Yeah.
But with all these consolidated services with that counties and states are talking about, I just can't imagine that there's not one license agreement, rather than Town of Riverhead going to Neverfail, and Town of East Hampton going to another cloud server, and another, you know, the county going to another cloud server. I mean, it would be great if everybody could have one license agreement and have all the storage in one, rather than paying
Will
for.
more than likely happen at one point.
Right, and Suffolk County's looking into a cloud, Nassau as well, what are they gonna charge? You know, the individual, townships are all gonna be responsible for how much storage they need, and that will happen, but it's not here today. I know that, Suffolk County is looking at it, but it's not available today. If and when it is available and it's more cost effective, you take the data and you put it on to Suffolk County, and you see if it is cost effective, but it's not here today. And you've gotta also
Security.
look at these other companies, well, yeah, that, like the police department's not gonna wanna be sharing with Suffolk County PD, or East Hampton, or Southampton, so on and so forth, they just wanna be on their own without other people. You got CJIS compliance as well to deal with,
So what about our town attorney? They're on a separate server,
they can come on the cloud as well.
so it would be a separate account?
They would, again, when we, with administrative rights, the attorney's data will not even be accessible or viewable by anybody unless you have those rights. It's just that simple. Nobody can get into their data, and that's that. There's no issue of somebody getting into the server here. They don't have access.
So they would come off, but
Yeah,
we just
that's
updated that server.
If you can correct me if I'm wrong, cause I'm not sure I understand that whole piece, but right now we have even Office 365, which actually does that. So we have the ability to reset your password, but we can't go into your OneDrive and look at those files. We can just reset it, and then we set it to ABCD, and then you go in and put your own password in it. So we really actually never see what's on your OneDrive or your email. We just reset it for you, and then you go in and do that, and then you have access to that again. So if is it the same way there, where with Neverfail, we're resetting them if something happens, we're just giving them access. Town attorney has access to their files and nobody else, and if something happens where, they lose it, we just would either reset their password or give them access again to those files.
Right, the data's not accessible because we're resetting a password. We're just resetting a password, and they can go in and change that password as well. You know, you get a temporary password, and then you change it on your own, just like all the big companies do with software now. You know, you had a question, about why Neverfail as opposed to, you know, Amazon or Azure and so on and so forth. So, before we recommend an offering at our company, we test it, we try it, we put our own software on it, and we really do a due diligence on what's out there. Especially, you know, Chris right here, who's with us for, I don't know, 18 years, I don't know, 20 years. And so we really test out what we're doing and make sure that's the best possible solution for our clients, because our reputation is based on that. So we looked at several companies out there, and we decided on Neverfail for a number of reasons. It may not be the most I'm not gonna say cost effective, because being cost effective is you get what you pay for. Their service is superior to everybody else's that we saw. Their solution with Workspace, the ability to have the end user choose that screen that looks really nice and easy and pretty to navigate through, is really good as well. So we looked at Microsoft, we looked at IBM's, we looked at Amazon, we looked at a whole bunch of them. We landed on Neverfail because it's one of the most secure out there. It's in line as far as cost as well, but I can get the CEO on the phone and to speak with him. I can't get Bill Gates on the phone, I'm not sure why, but I can. If that makes sense, we have a rapport and a relationship with them, bless you.
Thank you.
Based on using it. So we, you know, Tim, one of our folks from the office, Tim McKnight, he flew out there, he went to the site, he met with them, he did see the armed guards there. He got into the building, he had a black ops woman walking around with an M15. You know, it's the real deal. So we're recommending what we utilize ourselves and what we sell to our clients, because We wanna sit here a year from now, we wanna be able to use you as a reference, we wanna be able to do business with you for the next 10 or 15 years. So that's the reason for Never Fail, if that makes sense.
Well, I'm glad we're moving forward with something, just to reiterate what Bill said. I'm surprised at the lag that we have. As someone who came from the school district, Riverhead School District, into the town, the difference is startling. The service is really
Yeah.
challenging,
Well,
and
we've
it's
been
challenging to your work. You're in
and
the
we've
middle
been
of
spending
something
time
and you
and
lose
money.
service.
We've been spending time and money trying to fix that. As, Councilman Giglio said, even just the switches, we knew that that was an issue. It didn't fix everything, but so, as we go through and fix this, well, now that we fixed everything that we thought we need to as far as connection and everything else, where is our problem?
And we're loading a lot of software onto it. I mean, up until 5 years ago, when we were pushing and pushing and, you know, we brought the end users in and we went through 5 different computer programs and decided to go with BAS, and we slowly kept adding departments on, starting with code enforcement and building, and then adding, you know, the other agencies to come on board, and now the assessors and the receivers, and we have Edmunds, so we're overloading our server to where it just can't take it anymore. So, I mean, I like the idea that you can increase capacity at any time just by making a phone call, but I'm just curious as to, you know, I'd like to see what storage capacities they have, so that we have a good idea as to when we make the next jump, what it's gonna be costing us annually.
Do you mean what storage you have?
Yep,
Your needs of?
yep,
Based on what we analyzed over the course of, I'm guessing 6 months, you know, we're looking at, you know, that cost of $13,500 per month would be enough for now. If you needed to
and how much
increase-
storage capacity is that, and
Yeah,
what
and that's the-
percentage are we
that's
using
the
right now?
question, and I don't remember the number, and I wanna say that it was somewhere in the,
4 terabytes?
if I'm just making up a number if I do. If I throw 4, if I throw 6, I'm not.
I wouldn't know what you're
I'm
talking about
not
anyway.
precise.
Storage is-
Gigabytes, I know what you're talking about.
It's terabytes.
Straight storage is about 4 terabytes.
That's what I thought, 4 terabyte is the number I remember as well.
I don't worry about it.
So, I mean, that's obviously what you're buying on a monthly basis, you're buying the terabytes, so where are we with the 4 terabytes? I mean, we're not at 4 terabytes, we might be at 85% of it.
No, I think it was 4 consumed.
Really?
Yeah, I think it was, the consumption was what we look at. So you may have a 12 terabyte system, but you're not consuming all of it. So we base those prices on consumption, on
And then-
present consumption.
And then I'd be curious as to what the next jump is, whether it's, can you go from 4 to 5, or do you have to go from 4 to 6,
I
or
can
do
go
you-
from 4 to 4.1.
Okay.
Yeah,
It doesn't, I move up incrementally with, I have other clients out there, and instead of, you know, let's say for argument's sake that they have a terabyte of space, and they are almost at capacity, and maybe they're 25 gig free, or I'll let them roll up until the point where I only have a few gig free, and then maybe I'll add 25, depending on the rate of change. So if the rate of change is frequent, then maybe I'll add more. If it's infrequent, then I'll add a little bit, and over time I'll add a little more. So I kinda watch it and build it as I need it, as opposed to just say, and even if I do throw 200 gig at it, it's really, the pricing is still yet based on consumption, not necessarily what I've dedicated to it.
Okay.
It's thin in that respect, that we're only charged for what we actually
Right.
use.
So you have a rate chart for consumption?
I can get a rate chart for consumption, we do not have one,
Okay,
but yes, I know what those numbers are.
good, let's see them.
Very interesting. So we can get rid of some of these big bulky servers, or I guess not right away, but eventually.
Potentially,
guess
if it works, and that's the point of a proof of concept.
Right,
is-
we wanna make sure it works,
is
to your satisfaction.
not trying to make anything more complicated or difficult, trying to actually make it easier and more reliable, is the end result, the end goal, I should say.
Okay. Any further questions, anybody?
Thank you guys for coming.
Thank you
Thank
very
you.
much,
Nice to
gentlemen.
See everybody, have a
Thank
good
you
day.
very much.
Sign it, you get it, sign it. You need credit card?
It's got a lot of work to get there, but, you know,
I'm excited. Hey,
The school district?
you know, they say it's always the cobbler that has kids having the holes in
Yeah,
their
he's
shoes,
now
that's
the
our
head of
problem.
security
And
for the-
sometimes chasing some of the other debts,
Terry
you better
Culhane
use this.
just got the job a month ago.
Shoemakers.
They just hired somebody new.
Yeah, he's,
That's right, always has holes in their shoes.
known for many years, we did business together.
Thank you.
Very good.
Thank you.
Have a nice day, everybody.
You
too.
too, thanks.
Okay, Catherine? I
Jeff,
think, move on.
to the code revision.
Okay, next up, we have the proposed code amendments to downtown DC one. Jefferson Murphy,
Good morning, Jeff.
Bob,
So,
Kevin.
so the Downtown Revitalization Committee met on Monday. Jefferson came and we presented these proposed, code amendments to the Downtown Committee. And I have to give a shout out to the Downtown Committee. There's 16 members from the community. I think they represent the community well. And the meeting Monday went close to 3 hours. We got into a lot of discussion. Overall, the committee was very pleased with these, proposed changes. And I do believe, oh, also, since Dawn's here, I wanna mention that, Dawn Thomas and Jefferson and Anne Marie, Prudente all participate in the Downtown Revitalization Committee and are, great
Hi, Anne Marie,
great
how are you?
advisors to us.
Yes, they've been dealing with this
So
for
I
many
believe
years.
that the downtown committee represent the town well because, it's the will of the town, from everything that I hear, to scale down the buildings in the DC one area. The code currently allows 5 stories or 60 feet in the, DC one, with a 0 lot line, which means that buildings can be built to the property line, and as people know, the one building that's coming is a full build-out. The current code allows 100% impervious lot coverage, and we are proposing to go to 80% lot coverage. So the downtown committee was very pleased. They were in agreement with, Jefferson's proposed code amendment to do 2 stories and then allow 3 stories with the purchase of TDRs. And to allow to go to 4 stories with the purchase of TDRs, but it would be even more expensive. The proposal that we put before them was with 15 feet setbacks in the front and 15-foot setbacks in the back, but the committee asked to have setbacks all around,
Which is what
which is
Yeah.
Jody recommended at last Thursday's meeting.
Yeah, I thought the side yards was important, but I'm looking at the, impervious surface where it's been reduced from 100% to 80%, and if you're going to create a 15-foot side yard where you want a sidewalk, that's impervious surface, so how does, I mean, I get the setbacks, but I think that the impervious surface should still be allowed to, you know, be maximized.
Well, I think the committee's looking to have more public space too. There was a lot of talk about having more public space and having more green space. And actually, if you wanna revitalize your downtown area, I think what makes the area more inviting is more green space and more public space makes people wanna come into the downtown area.
In that
But I
15,
think-
in that 15-foot setback, that's where you're gonna create the community space?
But I think your point is well taken, that the community space is likely to be impervious.
Right,
Walkways, so
right.
Jeff, maybe we can qualify that.
Yeah, instead of saying it's impervious, it's public, maybe it's, there has to be a minimum of 20% public space
And we did talk about that. We did talk about that at the committee.
instead of impervious.
And as
Right.
time goes along, we're going to be talking more about specific design guidelines. I believe we're gonna be talking about this again next week, is the plan.
I have I get not having 5 stories, but you're not gonna see the river even with a 2-story building, so that's a moot point as far as visibility goes. But now, you go from 100% to an 80%. So, let's say I buy a piece of property. Let's say I call up and I buy 111 East Main Street. Now you've knocked me from 100% down to 80%. So I'm dedicating 20% of mine for public space, so is the town gonna purchase an easement or something to use that as public space, or is that not my property anymore?
It would be it would still be in fee title, where I envision it would be fee title, but there would be an easement over it so the public could access it.
It would be public space.
Oh, yes.
So that would be, of course, I wouldn't pay taxes on that, because that's not my space anymore.
Well, it's still part of your property, and then it's a question of how you tax it, that could be one of the remedies to it, is that you don't tax them for it.
Oh, okay, as long as there's a,
So, what would that be then, an offer of dedication,
you'd have
because
to,
if it's
yeah,
part of
you'd
the
have to
lot,
dedicate that
then-
property for public space, I would assume.
I would leave that up to.
Changes lot lines, everything else.
The lawyers.
I know,
No,
am I
no,
wrong?
you would not be required to do that.
So,
It's really a benefit to an argument is, it's a benefit to the property owner, because they're creating this space. People wanna go there, frequent their business, right?
Well, hopefully,
Right, so,
that's the goal.
I mean, Summerwind, that space to the south of the building is owned by Summerwind, but it's a public space with grass and
Right.
benches and a walkway.
The best example I gave of that, I can give to that is, and it's one of the ugliest buildings, and I apologize for saying that, is the aquarium. It's just a block building, it's got paintings on it, but it's got one really critical element to it. It makes you wanna go there because it has the statue of the whale coming out, and two, what else does it have? Seals. It draws people to the site, people wanna see the seals, they want, it draws you to it, it's a place where, I don't have to pay to go there, but I'm drawn to it because there's something of interest there. I can go there and have a sandwich, I can look at the seals, it's a kind of a peaceful place to be, and it makes you wanna go into the place. Oh, this is interesting, what's more behind that door? There's more of this behind there, so it's kind of an attraction to go into that.
Well, I'm all for public space, trust me, trust me. If I had the money now, I'd buy South Main Street, knock it down and build nothing, is what I would do, to be honest with you,
But I think that we should be looking at more of an accumulative, community space, rather than mandating a 15-foot front yard, a 15-foot rear yard, and, you know, a 15-foot side yard. I mean, I think that a 15-foot setback on Main Street is okay, but what are you gonna do in that 15 feet from the sidewalk to the front of the building? So,
I'm wondering about the front, I would think the sides and back.
Well,
well,
they-
I was
you wanna
thinking the
showcase the
sides
river,
too, because
not
you're
the
creating a
front.
corridor going down to the
Right.
river, so that's why I'm just confused, because Catherine originally started out saying a 15-foot front yard on Main Street and then a 15-foot rear yard, and I was talking about a 15-foot side yard.
That
So-
would be that would be for the third floor and the fourth floor, for stepping it
So
back.
the setback
Right,
on the
It's third and
additional
fourth floor,
floors.
right.
So the first floor would be able to come right up to the property
Correct.
line?
Right.
Okay.
But it'd be
Talking about
birthday
the
cake, everything
setbacks
else.
on the upper floor.
and that's where the 20% was coming in terms of impervious or public space, that would be on the first floor, obviously, so it could be on the Main Street side, it could be in the, cause the other thing that we talked about quite a bit with the committee was the appearance of the building from the Riverside portion of the site. We all talk about the Main Street, but the Riverside is just as important visually as the Main Street side, so.
Yeah, but how many of the buildings actually go right up to the river? I mean, the properties,
No,
they
we're
don't.
just talking about the look, and it's visual too. I mean, we're trying to create a better look visually.
Well, I was, I
They've
mean,
been-
a
believe me,
while ago,
They've been talking about turning Main Street to face the river since 1975.
They have,
well,
Yeah.
a while ago
it's
with,
time to do it.
our former CDA director, we had talked about trying to get some grant money to do a contiguous boardwalk or a walkway on the riverside, so that you would walk out of the store, and rather than walking onto a small platform and then walking down into the parking lot,
Right.
have a contiguous boardwalk where you could go to, a restaurant and get a bite to eat, and then go sit in front of another different restaurant and eat it, or, you know, what have you. So that sounds interesting to me, as far as the 15-foot on the riverside, to create some sort of contiguous boardwalk that you can, kinda like Atlantic City, where you walk into restaurants, or you walk into, you know, that type of thing, but,
So maybe if they don't provide it on site, they provide 20% somewhere else within the DC one.
right,
along the river.
instead of saying that,
I
right.
think one of the things we need to think about is, what is the overall plan?
You gotta be louder, Dawn.
We don't have a strategic plan for downtown, and that's one of the things that I've been harping on for a while. With a strategic plan like we're doing for our parking, and we're gonna do for hopefully our Railroad Avenue area, it's the effect of you all setting the table. set the table, decide what it is you want. What do you want in terms of public space? What do you envision in terms of, you know, connectivity to the river? And then work the zoning into that plan, because I think one of the things we keep doing is sort of like making some guessing, and I'm not a fan of guessing, so, you know,
Well, I think that's what we're working towards. I mean, clearly, that's what we're working towards.
but I think.
And that's what we worked with on the committee, and just to mention, just to throw it out as a side note, we also broke the committee down into subcommittees who will be working on an off date, and then coming together with the larger committee. We put together a subcommittee of long-range planning, and we do have quite a few planners on the downtown committee, which is helpful.
Do you sit on that committee?
Pardon me?
Do you sit on that committee?
I have been to a couple of those
Yes.
meetings, yes. I'm not, I'm
What officials in the
officially
town
on
sit
any
on
of
that
it,
committee?
I don't think.
You sit on that committee?
Come whenever you're willing.
Well,
It's
no, I
just-
mean, I don't, you know,
We're always happy to
The
have
question is,
your
it's
expertise.
a question of sitting on the committee or being staff to the committee.
yeah, that's what,
Right.
I think that's a better way of
we're
characterizing
staff
Okay,
to the committee.
okay.
Right.
And, you know, I don't go to all the meetings, Dawn doesn't go to the meetings, sometimes we talk about what she does, sometimes we go and talk about what I'm doing. So, you know, we go to them on an as-needed basis.
Well, and Dawn, Anne Marie, and Jefferson all worked on,
Well, I know Dawn and Anne Marie have been working
Worked
for
on
a
this
couple of
stuff.
years now on trying to at least do some investigative and looking at placemaking and all those things, and creative grant writing and all those things to create
Right.
public spaces and.
And you participated
Oh,
with
yeah.
Dawn and
Oh,
I,
this
we
is not
have
a new-
some really interesting conceptual plans.
How's it now, would the secret study and all that have to be done again, with the, for updates to the master plan and all that would have to be done as well?
This would be considered to be an update to the comprehensive plan, it would be a type 1 action, so it would require us to go out and do an environmental review of what we're proposing.
Which should be pretty soft shoot since it's less intensive.
It's less, exactly.
And Jeff, correct me if I'm wrong, our goal is actually not to contradict the master plan or any of the studies, and instead utilize them.
Complement it.
Right.
Implement it.
and when we were
Makes sense.
starting this whole process, Dawn and Anne Marie both talked about how all these studies have already been done.
Oh, word.
And we should be able to utilize information from these studies, which we are doing. And as far as staff members, I was talking about the 3 subcommittees, and we'll also be asking other staff members to step in and help when needed. So once again, the 3 subcommittees are the long-range planning, subcommittee, a problem-solving subcommittee, which will look at some of the problems and concerns of the downtown area, such as blighted buildings, you know, the vacancy, even the parking, even though we are getting a parking study done. And then there'll be a subcommittee that does marketing and branding. So we're trying to move in those directions as well.
So, back to the 15-foot side yard and the, 20% of community space, and I've always liked the idea of a, boardwalk on the riverside, and I think that a boardwalk on the riverside would give them a place to put the dumpsters underneath the boardwalk, and then put some sort of,
that's great.
lattice or something in front of the boardwalk, so that you have the boardwalk, then you have the lattice, then the lattice opens up, the dumpster's underneath, so that you don't have to look at,
Get a beer
the
district.
dumpsters, or also thinking about some sort of garbage district downtown. And I don't know how the Downtown Revitalization Committee feels about a garbage district, but having one carter come and pick up everybody's garbage and having it in one location that, it's taxed. I don't know.
That's something we're working on with the parking district right now.
Okay.
Is having a one-source unit come in. The problem we have is all these restaurants have contracts with different carters for, some of them 10 years out in the future, they're tied
Okay.
up. And trying to figure out how we can get them out of those contracts to then make one carter come in and be responsible to the town first.
Right.
Right,
For doing your duty, or doing your proper duty down there and cleaning up the area, not just picking stuff up and leaving the stuff that's laying on the ground and drive away.
Yeah.
We wanna have the power as the town to oversee that carter.
We did that with the diggers, we created a whole corral there, and I have sent letters to every business on that northwest corner between Roanoke and Griffin, everybody to come to a meeting to set up some sort of a collaborative effort to get one carter, one service, maybe 2 2 people showed up.
which makes
Right.
sense,
And
I mean, the
I
idea.
think Bruce Trio is one of them, he has a bag of garbage a week.
But I think it's important to look at for the downtown
It
revitalization
is.
committee and planning for the future, and then, you know, all of the stores that have access from the riverside, they're all elevated. And any new buildings would have to be elevated because of the flood zones. So I think that I would really love to see a contiguous boardwalk behind all those stores, that you would walk up, a little set of stairs, they all have the stairs going up to the back of their establishments now, where Robert James used to be, where Mazzy, the insurance place, you walk up, so a contiguous boardwalk on the riverfront, and that would be the community space, because you could go walk, sit, have a bite to eat, grab something to eat, go in and out of stores.
And lots of ideas have been thrown out, I think it was, Brian that talked about having some sort of green space in the center of in the back parking lot behind Sweezy's, where we could have concerts or things like that. There's all kinds of ideas thrown out there. I mean, I think the idea of a boardwalk is interesting. I'm not crazy about the idea of dumpsters under it, but, have to think about that. I will say that the Preston House did a good job, if you're ever at the Preston House, the way they did their dumpster, you know, the way they have it, set aside. But the challenge is for the stores right on Main, backed up to the river, are different for the dumpsters, and it's something we have to
Yeah,
address, but this
it
is.
just takes away from the scenic view of the river and from
Yes.
the back of the stores by looking at every single business having their own dumpsters.
Well, not as bad as it was with overflowing dumpsters right in the middle of the whole
Agreed.
parking lot.
Agreed, but how you liked how the Preston did it, well, they have the steel doors that come
Yes.
down, that it's a overhead door, that the carter presses a button, the door opens, they go in, they get the dumpster, they pull it out. If there was something like that, I mean, I don't wanna say a wall, but, you know, maybe working with future plans that are coming in and asking for an offer of dedication for an isolated area where you know, a common dumpster could go with that type of system
would
that.
Or a compactor.
Or
Would that,
compactor.
would that
Ultimately, a
particular
compactor.
design be part of what we're talking about in this code right now? The
Yes.
DC Now, the DC one code that the committee is working to revamp, is it eliminating 5-story buildings altogether, or just in certain areas? Because I'm not opposed to 5-story buildings.
In the DC one, but I think most people seem comfortable with going higher, you know, in other areas,
Yeah, but I
just
think
not-
as of right of I personally would limit the south side of Main Street. I don't think I would limit other areas on the north side of Main Street.
I think one of the most important
There has-
things is gonna be flexibility in the code, because, for instance, if you're gonna say you want a 15-foot setback on the side, well, that might not work on a particular property, or you wanna make sure that you can take those 15-foot sections or whatever it is and sort of combine them if it makes sense to do
Yes.
that and to get more public space, which is what everybody seems to be talking about. So I think the key in that lot coverage thing is gonna be that.
The big thing is we're getting a little confused in terms of the setback. The 15-foot setback has nothing to do with the first floor.
Right.
It only applies to third floor, and there'll be a 30-foot setback on the fourth floor.
So it's a birthday cake,
Yeah.
Right.
or a wedding
It's
cake.
tiered as you go up, as you call it, a wedding cake. And they like that.
Yep.
And they wanted
Because they're happily
they wanted it on
married, I
the
guess.
sides also, not just from the front and rear.
We do interesting things with, parapets and things of that nature for ornamental effect of a building. But
That's kinda hard to
I-
jump over, I guess.
chiming in on what Jim said, cause it makes a lot of sense, is that there has to be an ROI, there has to be a return on investment. And for, you know, I agree with the TDR program, I'm not sure I agree with the 3,000 square feet, because, you know, if you have a second or a third story that's 20,000 square feet, you're talking about 7 TDRs, at about 60,000 each. You know, there has to be a good return on our investment. I mean, we've had the 5-story zoning in downtown Riverhead since 2004. And the people that are coming in are looking at, okay, if I can get a 5-story building, and it's not gonna cost me anything more other than the cost of the lot and the construction materials, and there's a good return on investment. It's gotta balance, so you really gotta have somebody that's in the development field come and look at you know, what the costs are associated with building a 3 or a 4-story building, and what the market value of the properties are downtown, and whether or not somebody's actually gonna come in and buy one of these buildings and do something with it, because that's been our struggle since 2004. So, and that's with everything in place right now, that they can do whatever they want, essentially, so.
Well, I
The
don't
market values of the property is gonna be directly related to what you allow to be built on it.
Right,
If you're, obviously, a 5-story building allowed on a piece of property right now is more valuable than if we change it and make
Right.
it that it's a 2-story, only 2 stories or 3 stories are allowed, or the purchase of TDRs. It obviously makes the value of the property change, and that's something that the owners of those properties have to go along with too, and it doesn't seem to be over the years that they've always wanted to play nice downtown. They want top dollar for property that's in disrepair, in my opinion,
yes.
and, hence we have many unoccupied buildings. So this all has to be looked at collaboratively and
Yes.
try to.
Well, plus the change of the zone, I mean, if it ever comes to the point where the town finally gets the gumption to go ahead and capture some public spaces for itself,
Right.
then the highest and best use is not 5 stories, the highest and best use is 2.5 stories or whatever it is.
Well, I think that our downtown is walkable enough that you could place 5 stories close to the, close to the main street, and it's within walkable distance.
Oh, I think
mean,
anything for
putting,
the
we already
traction
have
and-
we already have 5-story buildings on Main Street, and if you continue to put them right on, you're gonna change the look and the feel of the whole downtown. So it's just something to think about, we're
yeah,
going
right.
So,
to,
Jody,
we're gonna
taking-
continue to talk more.
And taking your point regarding the TDRs, Mitch Pally, Frank Bayrod sit on the TDR subcommittee, Richard Wines, all with business financial backgrounds, so maybe they could explore the TDRs.
Yeah.
Maybe the 3rd story, you can have a greater square footage.
Right,
As opposed to the 4th.
that's what
You
I'm
know,
just saying, I mean,
so
any
maybe they can
developer-
review that and give an opinion.
Yeah, that would be great.
I haven't
That's
heard
all.
I haven't heard anybody on this board in favor of 5-story buildings on the south side of Main Street, just to make that
No.
clear. So, I think 5-story buildings are not offensive, I just think that the river should be showcased where, I had this discussion with Greg Villo in 1975, when Dick Bruzanowski was running for office, and his big complaint was
Back
that, well, back then, Grants is stealing all the business from Main Street, so 58's gonna kill Main Street, and that the river wasn't showcased to us. And that was 50 years ago, 40 years ago.
But you
So,
were saying that putting,
I'm not opposed to
but the
5-story.
height on the south side isn't gonna make a difference with the view of the river, then why would
No,
you
I'm
limit
saying-
on the south side but not limit on the north side? For me, it isn't just about the
I'll
river.
explain to you.
Well, let me
I'll
finish.
explain-
It's just
well,
about the
I didn't
feel
fin- I
and
didn't
the look
finish.
of the whole downtown.
I've said whether you have a 2-story building or a 5-story building, it still blocks the view of the river. That's what I said. Cause I'm not tall enough to look over a 2-story building. What I wanted was public spaces where there's no buildings. I'd like to move the DC one to the north side. You wanna put a 3-story building there, you wanna buy TDRs for 2 more stories, use that TDR to purchase property on the south side and take public space. That was my
Right.
goal.
So, and that was in the BOA study for the Wild Scenic Recreational River, but that was down on West Main
But there's no
Street,
money,
not
no
necessarily,
investor's gonna
not
come and pay that,
downtown.
it's kind of,
It would be great if the committee had, I think, a list of important things that it feels is important for that central part of downtown. For instance, do you want a skating rink? Wasn't time for it a few years ago, but is it time for it now? And if you had it, where would you put it? And those kinds of things can help, I think, shape the zoning, and then if the
And
zoning's
that's something they
flexible
talked about in that, right behind, in the
Yeah,
Swayze's
so
in the
if they-
center.
Right.
They did talk about a skating rink there.
remember?
East End Arts.
Bid came in with
The
that, and they
Ribbon
wanted to
Grill.
put it where that dumpster corral was, where they wanted to put it. And I said, that's not the place for it, the center of town is across from the theater, behind 111 or whatever.
That's where we talked about.
So if you had
That's the center
that
of town.
list of like priorities and where you would like to put them, then I think, and then having, I think Pam and I discussed this a lot, if you can have the flexibility in the zoning to allow some creativity in that from the development community with ROI and getting some of this, open space tacked on to different things, or maybe making a fund or something like that, maybe then you could, really kinda hone in on exactly what the zoning ought to say. I don't know.
And Dawn, maybe we
I like
could
the back
share.
of
This is a good start,
I
though,
like
this
to
is
start
definitely a
with
good start, we're moving in the right direction, that's for sure.
what is the core desire?
Better, right?
What's the movement?
And-
So, again, I think it's a cumulative approach, and as planning looks at site plans right now, and there's a requirement for 20% of landscaped areas, the planning board dictates where that 20% will be, for the most part, of that, green space. So, I like the flexibility of being able to depict where the 15-foot side yard is, or front yard, or rear yard, and look at it cumulatively, based on what buildings downtown we think are going to be coming in for redevelopment, and just taking a look at those specific properties to come up with a cumulative plan as to what is going to fill the community space and the green space that is going to create a walkable community, whether it's a boardwalk, or whether it's a 15-foot side yard where you have two buildings that are right next to each other that are, you know, you can get 15 foot from this person, and you can get 15 foot from this person, then you have a 30-foot with steps going down to the river and art.
Well,
Sculptures
definitely the
Right.
community talks at length about wanting to bring art into the downtown.
Yeah.
But I mean, right now, we're working on the DC one, but we eventually need to move into all the different areas. I mean, West Main is a beautiful area to revitalize. We have the whole railroad station area, which we need to put a tremendous amount of work in. But I think that basically we're on the same page that
Right.
we.
The only comments I have, and I agree with you, is I still think, for sustainability for the downtown merchants, there still has to be some consideration for housing. But I don't wanna nix housing, because housing has been proven throughout the island to be a catalyst for growth and for positive growth as far as commercial goes. The second thing is, we talked about this before, and the timing was never right, about, you know, Patchogue did it for 6 months, they put the brakes on, so let's have the dust settle, let's make sure that we're moving in the right direction, and now, I realize nobody wants to hear moratorium. Now with lawyers, we've got 3 lawyers here, and a couple of wannabe lawyers,
He's a
is,
wannabe lawyer.
Tim and I. So,
Bite your tongue.
well, we came out a little bit.
Yeah.
Is there any nexus, I know you have to have study, you have to have some sort of reason, you just can't
Yes.
do that.
And that would be in your, you know, I think if you use the existing plans, sort of cull the information you need for this area to get what it is that you want done, and if you have that list of what it is that you want to see there, and then you can maybe, that will also help developers when they come in, understand what it is that your vision is for the downtown, because I think there's a lack of that currently, so. if
No,
you
and
could-
developers wanna know that, and we will of course continue to meet, we are going to be meeting more often with the downtown committee. I will be inviting people to attend, and I will be bringing back information to the board, and we're going to speak on a regular basis. But just to get back to the setbacks, Jody, this was the way the setbacks were.
Yeah,
These are all public
Yeah,
meetings,
no,
right?
I-
So, I mean,
Just
No,
so,
but that
I
was-
think you had
Just so
seen that already.
anybody-
Yeah,
just-
I mean, that's something,
Jeff.
I'm sitting in the back.
Yeah.
That's all right.
but also,
Here's a photograph of
Near
like
and dear to me.
two-story,
Yeah, that's a good,
versus,
that's a good,
this came from, I'm gonna give Denise Civiletti credit for this photograph, it came from her.
Concord Crossing.
Specana Crossing,
5th Street, beautiful.
across from, Griffin Avenue, it's an existing two-story, building.
The only thing I don't like about Baconic Crossing is that it's all, well, it's full build up and it's all glass right there. I mean, there's something not inviting about there's a gallery in there, but it's not inviting you and
That
enticing
gets
you
me
in.
to the other part, which we haven't talked about a great deal, if you take a look at my memo, and I asked you to do it again, the design guidelines, I completely deleted all the existing design guidelines, put in a whole new set. I'm not saying that's the end all, I did it as a placeholder, but it's 1,000 times better than what we have today. The design guidelines that we have in there today are not very good. I think what I put in there is better, but they can certainly be a lot better. I take a look at what the quality of the design is okay, the quality of the material really needs to be substantially improved. I think that the residents of the town deserve better. I've seen it done better in other towns, in Brookhaven and Southampton. There, Tim, I said it. But I took a look at the quality of the development. I take a look at Joe Farrell building, he's building a 30,000 square foot shopping center in Southampton, Flying Point. The quality of that development is, we don't get that up here. I don't know why.
And we should.
And we should, absolutely we should. And I see it in other developments in South, right, on 39 Southampton Village, they're building a 2-story medical building that's absolutely stunning, it's magnificent, it makes you wanna go there. And
Well,
I see this,
You can't have both.
And then,
I'm saying.
You can't diminish,
and then I look at the
ROI
apartments on
and then
Tuckahoe
expect
Lane
to
and
have
I'm
quality
like,
for
wow,
sale.
they could have done a lot better with
Can't do
that.
both.
Right, so,
But anyway,
but just look at the design guidelines,
I
that's
get
what I'm
it.
asking.
so another thing that I think is very important and something that I had discussed many years ago and when we started to get all these affordable apartments coming in that are 30, 40, 50, 60, 80, 100, 120% of the median income, I mean, I really think that we need to look at that because we need market rate, we don't need to be saturated with affordable housing, I think we have enough. I think that I think that that's important, and I think if you look at the Koch versus Chinatown case, that actually gave Mayor Koch the opportunity to go in and say, no, you know what, we're not doing this anymore, we're gonna switch to market rate, we have too much,
oh, I think.
and
right,
enough of
right.
that, so
I think most of them want market rate, at least a
think-
portion of it.
but I think it's important to look at the downtown area in general and make sure that we're not oversaturated with one, type of housing unit versus another. And I think that more market rate is needed at this time, and I think ownership opportunities are important. So we may want to come up with a chart saying, this is how many we have, this is how many. And I think we really need to get that out of the code as soon as possible that says that 500 apartments based on a certificate of occupancy. I think we need to go to public hearing on that, like, right away, to get, you don't need a certificate of occupancy. If there's a building permit for 500 apartments, then that's the 500 that, and we still don't know where that 500 number came from. I
I'm
think
not
that-
even sure that that's desirable, I don't think I think 500 might be too much,
I think it's a fictitious number.
It is a
It's-
fictitious
Right.
number.
So,
There is no study.
I think you
it's
should
on-
expand, you
Reporting
should
that
expand
number.
the downtown area to
Ever.
include Railroad and
Right.
Pulaski. I mean, 500 maybe in that vicinity, but maybe
Right.
not right down there.
But I think
I agree with that.
for the ultimate goal and for the end goal of getting more trains coming in here, the only way that that's gonna happen is if we have more housing in downtown.
That's not gonna happen.
And create the walkable communities, and Jim, your idea of the 5-story buildings next to the train tracks for apartments, and, but if they're market value and their workforce, and you have like like they have in the dormitories in Maryland, when my, daughter was going to school at Loyola, my stepdaughter, she, they have common spaces within the buildings
I just-
and outside the buildings for.
Realistically, I don't think more apartments are gonna bring more trains, I don't
But
think that's the
I do
case.
think there's somebody
More
that
people
you
using
can-
them will.
there are professional people that can give you those, that help in determining what is the right number.
Right.
And so, 500 might not be supported, I think we haven't really found support for that in any of our studies, it was maybe a little, just a.
It's in the law, but we can't find it
But I
back in
think
the
if you,
report.
Right.
I think there's we don't have to guess, is my point, is we can hire,
Well, we'll know when enough is enough, cause we'll see it.
decide.
But I
What?
like Catherine, I like what you're saying, and I think that like on the Main Street, keeping the, more quaint appeal of Main Street, I mean, I was in Sayville the other night, it's very quaint.
Sayville's a
but-
beautiful main street.
But then as you go further back, then you get into the taller buildings, which is something that Jim's been talking about, and, just shift some of it.
And I actually don't think Patchogue put all their tall buildings right on their
Yeah, they did.
street.
Ooh, did they ever?
Yep,
On the north side of.
I almost, I understand what they did.
We don't have to
Right
be just
on.
like Patchogue.
Yes, it is.
I think it's 4-story.
It was good for them, but I'm not sure I like
It's
it.
not for
A
us.
lot of very
It's not,
tall
I don't think it's
Well,
for us.
Right, not like that,
No,
but
Well, they don't have the water.
we can do a mix of both,
identity.
true.
but it's interesting
They do, but
because
not
behind,
bad.
the Brick
Not
House Brewery, they do have like a square where they have, the buildings that are off Main Street, then they have a parking lot, then they have like a common area that's like a square with, they don't.
If we had that 6 acres on Main Street right there with that between Eastern Arts and the Grill, if we had that as open space
That's exactly.
without parking lot,
The correct place
I don't
for
care,
it.
I'm not opposed to 5-story buildings on the north side, cause it gives more value on the north
Something to
side.
think about
I
also
think it
is
would
the
look
fact
weird to have
that we
five-story
already
right across.
have.
Well, not right across, it'd be, I'm
As a
talking about
very
First
wide
Street,
open space, now it's
Second
been
Street,
very
there's 5-story buildings. on Second Street.
circumscribed by fencing and everything else, but I think if you built on that, what you already have, that might be something to work with too, because, we've been talking about that's the town's property, it's leased to East End Arts, but certainly, I think,
Build off of that property.
work off of that and then make that
You mean make that like
Yeah.
a central
Your
area and work out from there?
centerpiece, because,
It's such a
yeah.
beautiful
It is.
space in there, when we had
And
the
it is very
fireworks at the, I-125, I
Centrally
walked from
located.
there.
It's the ideal spot.
so if you could, you know, sort of work off of that and decide what are the elements that you really want there, because I think, you know, everybody's saying the same thing.
When you're
We
in
are.
that, when you're in
We
that
are.
East End Arts area, it sort of gives you a sense of the whole town, because it's got the art, it's got a little bit of an agricultural feel there, and, I like that idea. So we'll keep moving along, I'm happy to have feedback from the board, and I will continue to bring feedback from the downtown committee to you, and we'll just keep moving along on this.
And seeing
think we
that the
have a good
county
start.
has all this money for preservation, instead of thinking about preserving property on Forge Road and Main Street, like maybe they'd preserve a piece of property downtown for an open space.
So there's such beautiful spots along West Main.
Well, actually, they were looking at that lot right across from the old
Lots, I
Henry
Yeah.
Fife.
Right at the end of Osborne Avenue.
Henry Perkins. Yeah.
They own a lot there.
Well,
And then
Tucci
the
owns
lot
a
next
there.
door is for sale, it's,
Tucci owns a big
Malicki
lot
owns
there,
it.
goes back. We talked about it.
Maybe a skating rink
Yeah,
over
the
there,
open space.
where it's walkable to
next to the
downtown and to the
7-Eleven that's coming.
restaurants.
Jeff,
They
did
can
you
go
have
get a
any other
Slurpee and go
points
ice
that you
skate.
missed?
We should buy that
So
property.
thank you to Jeff and Dawn and
Thank you,
Brenda
Jeff and Dawn.
for working, and
Keep
Bob.
us informed of what this committee wants.
What'd you
and
say?
we'll tweak it.
and ice skate, I said hot chocolate and ice skate.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, Slurpee's nice. Ooh.
Did you take notes?
No, I never,
Yeah.
I don't wanna have blue
So
lips.
DC two has a 15-foot.
Give me the ability to raise money on the north side to buy this house.
Okay, next up, we have Chief Hagemiller with the monthly police data update.
15.
Oh, we've only been asking for it since like, June.
Get some small.
Of course, I lie, cause I'm a politician, I'm supposed to.
Well, when it's, you can find it somewhere. If you don't have it in the side yard, then you can have it in the back or in the front, or, you know,
Flexible.
yes.
Yeah, it's not,
Keep it here, tough, like
it
this one.
doesn't speak out that
doesn't,
say,
yeah,
this is
that's
our
what I'm saying.
Good morning,
artist lobby.
Chief.
Where the one in Patchogue
Nice to
does.
see this, I
I
actually
gave it to
read
you
these
digi-
reports.
I gave it
I
to you
do.
digitally, but just in case you didn't get a chance to look at it.
I
I
do.
was busy.
I look at it all the time, and I got a whole file of these, from the last 11 years, believe it or not.
I know.
Okay,
I read them
This
and
is
then I
monthly stats,
throw
one
them away.
year.
No,
monthly
I-
stats 101.
Chief, do you have any extra?
I do have.
Why, who wants it? Denise here?
I gave you one.
Here, I'll share with
No, I
Tim.
think
I think we should be sharing with them.
We all have it
I think
on.
it's hard to sit there and we're talking about it and they can't see.
Okay, she's on Candy Crush.
Chief, we get to see you once a month for these reports?
You're the one on.
Chief, there's a huge misconception that downtown Riverhead is unsafe. We have had an incident here and there.
Correct.
But part of these monthly reports are really helping to educate the public that there's a perception and not a reality. And that's important to remember. There's not a town, village, residential area, anything that exists anywhere in the world that does not have crime. It doesn't exist. And perfect example, and I hate to bring this up and even compare it, but the tragic shooting in California last night, that town of Thousand Oaks was voted one of the safest places in America, along with Parkland in Florida, one of the safest places in America. So, the reality is, no place is safe, but we will work to make it as safe as we can. And the perception of Riverhead that the downtown area has had for many, many years, and to some degree, many years ago, rightfully so.
Right, but I think
Jim
that's, I
can
think
back
that
up to
outlook
me
has
with,
changed. I know that
with,
it's,
Yeah, well, we talked about 414 being gone.
exactly.
oh, there was
I
Judge
mean, that
Belford's
was,
414.
that was a bad area, that was a bad time. That's gone.
Saxton's Place, and Railroad Avenue, all those places.
I was here in 81 when I came.
Having said that, we can still do better. And part of looking at these monthly reports, seeing the amounts of certain types of crime and certain areas that some of these crimes are, I think it's going to be addressed, and I really give a lot of credit to, Laura with the budget, coming up with the 607 and the 608 sector. dividing that area into 2 sectors now of foot patrols is gonna be a tremendous asset to taking care of a lot of that perception that's down there. So
Well, other
I
than-
applaud Laura and you and us as a board for embracing that, because it's been needed, it's just been tough to find in the budget to be able to do it, and, now we're gonna be able to do it. You won't have any cars to drive for the next 15 years, but, you know, we'll
With
have
a
a
lot of
safe
mileage on
downtown,
them.
that's right.
But
One or
people
the
are
other.
moving away from cars.
Right,
There's
right,
more walking,
right.
but just to piggyback on what Tim said, I'm really pleased that we are able to put more police presence in the downtown area. When I'm downtown, I wanna see policemen, at least, you know, walking or somewhere around.
It's a sense of
Which I-
security for a
and we
lot of
need that
people to see
for a
that, and
couple of
I
reasons.
understand that.
To overcome, you know, this misconception that Riverhead's not safe, and for safety, of course, but we need to see more police presence there.
I like the trikes.
I should've brought that with me, I
You
left
should
it
have,
in the office.
because they're using them in New York City, and they're trikes. I actually showed it to, Dave Lassard, and he's like, I would get on that, and I would ride around Main Street. I think that, you know, during the winter months, you know, foot patrols are nice, but these trikes, they'll go through anything. And you will get from A to B, and you will get there faster, and when you get there, you're not gonna be panting from running. You're gonna be ready to help your fellow officer to combat a
Are they
crime
like
or.
a three-wheeled Segway, or
Yeah,
are they
no,
a motorized
It's like, it's
cross
almost like,
between the old
Scooter,
scooter
It's
type
almost,
thing?
but smaller than
Yeah.
a scooter, you stand
And
up
they're
on
like-
it,
Like a cushion, yeah, right.
yeah, so it's,
but they're
We had some of
expensive.
those, I
pretty
think.
neat,
Oh, I guess I've
actually.
seen
They
them other
are.
places.
the one
And
I
they
saw at
have-
the conference
They're like
had
the mall
They
top
have-
cars
they
on
have-
it.
When the mall top
Really?
rode
It
around?
had
No.
parking software on it, so the guy didn't even have to,
Ticket
or the
dispensers
officer didn't
out
have
the
to walk
side.
out the, cars, it actually videoed the cars as you went down the street,
And
took
they're like-
note of the tires.
they're
and where they
expensive.
are and stuff
They're
like
like 30,000 each, but.
39.
39.
Wow, wait, you could buy a car for that, 2 cars for that.
But
A car.
they get a lot of mileage, and they, you know, I like them. I think they're great, and I did talk to the chief about it, and I showed him a couple of models that I was looking at, and I think that it's something that we should think about, maybe for next year's budget, not for this year's budget.
Are they electric, are they gas powered?
Electric.
Electric? Charged
The
up
ones I
like a
looked at
golf
were
cart
electric.
every night,
Yeah.
or?
Yeah,
well, first,
they had to switch out batteries, so you
Yeah.
just need to.
since we're patting you on the back, I appreciate the customers, I'm down Main Street 2, 3, 4 times a day. It's, I live right there, but,
So,
I think a lot of the perception now, and Riverhead's about the only one that does this, and it's probably not a bad thing, but I think it leads to people thinking that Riverhead's the only place where there's crime, is you guys are very active with your media releases. It seems like for everything, there's press releases going out, and the press picks up on it. So Newsday's always running something about Riverhead, where other towns don't do that. And so, Newsday's grab whatever news they can grab, and if you get to the Long Island section, Eastern Long Island section, there's Riverhead.
I understand what you're saying, but I don't think it's a good idea to sweep stuff under the rug.
I didn't say,
understand
what
what
the hell
you-
did you say? I
Oh,
just said,
I thought you
No, we
meant, that's
go
part
above
of
and
the
beyond
perception.
the other way
I meant,
is
that's
what
not
he's
what I
saying.
said, I
Oh,
said,
okay.
We
that
report
leads
it-
to the perception, is
Oh.
because we do press releases. I didn't say not to do that, so I
Oh,
don't know what
alright.
sweeping the rug is, but that's a different conversation. But I think that leads to it.
Yes, if other departments aren't doing it, and
And
they
they
want
aren't.
something from the East End, then they might choose Riverhead.
Cause everybody says, I saw this from
But I
Riverhead,
think
I said, well,
Southampton's pretty active with their press releases.
So, now do you have this broken down by sector?
I do have that, but, not copies for everybody.
So, one thing that I've noticed is that the lighting could be a lot better downtown, especially in the walkways
Oh, that-
going
yeah, that's-
from Main Street down to the river or
Front
on the
town
other
hall
side.
is terrible.
So, I think that the lighting, and I think, I like those call boxes that you could put on the light poles, that
We-
it's,
we
if you
used to
need an
have them.
officer, or if you see something
Oh, many,
suspicious,
many
it has a
years ago.
pull, you
Had one
know?
right
Right,
on the
blue
corner
lights.
of Suffolk Theater.
That's
for
right.
years.
Well,
And
it's-
people would walk by, pick it up, leave it
Used to have
hanging,
one-
and
used-
keep on walking,
to have one
and
at
an
Stotsky
officer would
Park.
have to go down there.
Where was the
It
other one?
Where was the other one?
Next to
There was one by the
headquarters,
comfort station, wasn't there?
there's one at headquarters,
There's one over by Bull and Bear, actually, on that side.
yeah, and there was one at Starsky Park, across from Starsky.
Stotsky Park had one.
Bull and Bear.
Well,
Well,
That's going
that's
back.
when it was there.
John Sullivan's Hotel, yeah.
Right.
So, I don't know how you guys feel
Blue
about
lights,
those,
we
but,
put into the proposal as far as.
What was it for the Bull and Bear?
So
Okay.
they were in there.
and then,
We're working on a camera proposal right now for.
yeah, because you know what, you want the camera on that call box, so that if somebody's doing a prank and they're just pressing the button or pulling it for, you know, just to be obnoxious, then you know who did it, and you
No,
can
then they'd be chasing me, cause you know how I do it.
pick up on them pretty quickly. But and Tim, you brought up a really good point the last time that we had these discussions too, in that the crime that we do have downtown is targeted. I mean, it's not random.
No,
It's
no.
random.
No, the little old lady walking with her pocketbook isn't getting knocked down and having her pocketbook stolen. These are related crimes that people intended to do specifically to one particular
Right,
person.
crime is always a crime
Way
of
more than
opportunity,
anything
always.
And I can tell you that I have walked downtown,
Definitely not targeted.
most recently at the, you know, Halloween
Country fair?
parade.
Oh.
And some of the vacant buildings where they have the potential to have a light outside of their building, you know, so that people aren't hanging out in like corridors and then jumping out at you, like the kids in the ghillie suits, but, you know, that's happened on occasion too, where I've walked downtown and someone's been tucked away in a corner and I've kinda like moved away quickly from the front of that store where someone's like, you know, tucked away. So maybe we could get some of the business owners downtown to actually replace the light bulbs and the light sockets that they have outside their buildings to create more of a light and to get some of those
Lights.
people that
light
are
is a good thing
hiding
to have.
away
Lights
in
are
the
always good to have.
crevices of the front of those buildings that are abandoned forever to,
And it would be nice to have light in that one alleyway,
Which
like
one?
string lighting would even be nice.
yeah.
Which one?
It's down on
South side, north side?
south side.
Southside.
Like right by
There's
the
no lighting in
snooker?
that alleyway that I see.
Where
No,
the
right-
snooker aquarium was, the alleyway right
Right,
there.
that's right.
Oh, the old next Carmen Bob's there.
And
Yeah.
actually, when we did our downtown walk, everybody on the committee brought that up.
But even under the old bank, you know, where you have that cut through where you could drive through to the back, to, right next to the Easton Arts Council, you know, the drive-through?
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Like, if that was lit up, yeah, I mean, just,
And the one just further west of that
Right.
also, the cut through there.
right,
Yeah,
Could be
So-
lit better.
across
so
from
the
theater.
cut-throughs,
Right.
I think it's important, and it's probably a better discussion for engineering, but I think lighting is very important, and when it comes to perception of crime.
Lights are important.
And feeling safe.
Remember, we said very active crime prevention where sometimes we have to get right back out to public and do target hardening too. There's ways that people, we used to teach it, you know, we could teach people to be aware of their surroundings. I mean, that's a whole separate
Always
complex.
be
but
aware of
that's-
surroundings.
Yeah, I mean, we've run seminars all the time, so public awareness is good too, so.
Chief, one thing I'm, with the parking district, our concern down there is with, without enforcement, we can have all the signs up in the world. If nobody's enforcing it, it's a waste of everybody's time. I know enforcement has started. I know you went and bought some chalk against your best wishes, but where there is gonna be enforcement down there, I'm looking at the numbers here for parking, and obviously, June, July, and August are the three highest months. We have the TCOs working, the majority of that. And so your parking summonses are gonna be up. You also have more traffic, realistically, in those 3 months.
Sure you do.
In the town than you do other times of the year. The concern of the district is, we would like to find out if we could be more spot sensitive on the tickets that are issued, like the parking district itself. We would like to know how many, tickets are issued within the parking district, within the town of Riverhead. And we have maps we can get to you about where the parking districts are. I'm just not sure if you have the availability, and I explained this to the parking district people, to take, the summonses are entered into a log. Cause these would generally be town summonses, cause they're parking tickets, so they're entered into a book. But I'm not sure there's any further entry in terms of data collecting to say where that ticket was issued.
First I'll check with FBS, cause they might capture that information.
Okay.
So that would be decent that way. I think maybe coming up with a code system as far as assigning different numbers to different lots or something like that, and then the officer can just write it on a ticket.
Well, that may actually be part with the wayfaring signs that are coming in. The idea was to identify these parks, these parking lots by parking lot A, B, or
Right.
1, 2, 3, or whatever, that they
That
would be
make
better
it
identified.
easier,
Sure
right.
it would.
And then also, as far as coding, it would make it easier too, because if
Oh,
someone
it's
writes
the parking
down
lot behind
Peconic
Diggers, you know,
Avenue
there's no
parking lot, it's
specific,
PEC,
Right.
AVE, LOT,
right.
is different than, we just spell it all out and the
Correct.
computer's looking for it, so.
Correct, okay.
Since you
But
brought-
something we would like to see that data if possible, coming
And
up.
since you brought up parking, I wanna look at we have to look at the results from Sam Schwartz. But at the parking meeting, you guys were both there, they talked about how there are lots that could be used, it's just that they're right off of the downtown area, and there's a problem with people not feeling safe walking, perhaps from working as a waitress late at night to one of those lots.
Here's one of the New York PD.
But what did you think about that?
That looks like my grandkid's toy.
About the.
Yeah,
Yeah,
you
but
were there
it's
when
not
we had the
unlimited
discussion.
issues. Tickets
on
Can
the
we,
sides, they
can we
can
just
sit on.
finish this,
I
or?
think 608 will improve that, so there'll
Mhm.
be more out in the lots, having two people down there, so they'll be around more. I mean, right now, if he's on the south side, there's no one on the north side, so having two will definitely improve that.
Because I think the discussion was about that a lot of the parking is taken up close to the businesses by people who are working there.
Right.
And whereas if people felt safer, they might park a distance. Remember when we had that discussion?
We've always had that on the north side.
And also having a dedicated area for the waiters,
Employees.
waitresses, and bartenders, because then there's also safety in numbers, because if they're getting off at similar times, they're going to the same area, there
Right.
might be more people around. There's a lot of things that can be done in conjunction to make that work. And right now, it's very willy-nilly, and honestly, they're parking and taking the prime parking spaces up.
Yeah, I'd like to
Right.
talk about
It's
those
just,
too.
you know,
I'll
And
go to the next
there
parking
was
district
talk
meeting
about
with that.
people, just like you were saying, like people just parking and leaving their car there for a large, right on, in a key
Need a lot
location
more
on
time
Main Street,
parking.
where those
Right,
spots should be for
right.
people pulling up and running in and running out.
And this is
That would
only
be-
gonna get exaggerated once the apartment housing comes in.
I mean, personally, you know, because I do work sometimes at the funeral home, that parking lot, which is a municipal lot where 414 used to be, is all taken up by Atlantis employees. And that's a prime parking spot for people visiting the aquarium, or maybe coming to visit a wake or something, but it's full first thing in the morning.
I think they
I've
changed
talked,
that.
we've talked to them, and I think now they're requiring their employees to park further up on Ostrander.
Must have been the last 2 weeks.
In the
because
lots they have, well, I mean, they've told them whether they're actually following through or not, but I know it has been addressed.
And that's a matter of
Cause
safety.
they don't want that either, they want their
For people
customers.
to feel comfortable walking a few blocks.
Sure.
Yeah, they got the shuttle to they run their place back and forth. Yeah, you're right, but lighting's good, all that stuff, it's all good stuff. I love the LED lights, but they are not sufficient.
Okay, thank you.
They're really not sufficient for Main Street.
Chief, we look forward to every month, I guess, for you
Visit
coming
twice
in
a year.
and going over some of the data with us. And it gives us a better idea to look and see, obviously, you know, we can put our thoughts together as to time periods of year, certain crimes are higher, certain are lower. It gives us a better idea. But again, part of it is perception, and it's something that you have to feel comfortable with, and you have to understand certain factors involved. And I think maybe you coming in every month and having these discussions will help people feel more comfortable, as they should, to be able to go
I
down.
think
Well,
I'm a
if
little
we-
tainted only because I remember what it was, I see what it is, and so
I
to me it's a
know.
lot better.
I agree.
And maybe
I
for somebody coming
totally
the first
agree.
time,
Right.
it's not.
Right.
And I'm happy to look at the numbers by sector, cause it shows me areas that we, you know, where the problems are and that we need to focus on. Thank you.
Okay, no problem.
Next month when you come back, bring that picture of that scooter that we were looking at.
Yeah.
Scan
And
it
to your
and send
point,
it over
we
to
should
you.
probably talk
Thank
to
you.
engineering about lighting.
I think we should look
They just
at
changed, they
That's
just
it.
changed
That's
the
really cool,
luminous and
I've
all that,
never
so.
seen that.
and they have like ticket
Downtown is
writers on
always
the
a
side, so
very
you
dark
just,
street, no
you
matter what.
scan,
Even
it
these LED
actually
lights
has a
go with that.
scanner where you take it and you scan the
I agree.
registration and then it goes right to the scooter and prints the ticket. and
Even
it's-
if it's still 11 and they go down, they
Yeah,
have hours.
that's great, that's great.
Alright, Tim, you kept us on
Okay.
a pretty tight schedule.
Work session agenda, open session, work session is now
Thank you everybody for
completed.
coming, and
Make a
please,
motion
be careful on the
to
way out,
close
you don't
work
stampede
session
each other.
agenda. Do I have a motion?
Move to adjourn the, work session?
Second?
Second.
Yes.
All in favor, aye?
Aye.
This is a,
Okay.
this is a motion to go into
We
executive?
now will go into executive
You don't need a
session to
motion close
discuss
the work session.
personnel matters surrounding the resignation of an employee,
Negative,
contractual discussion regarding a possible contract with an investor,
negative.
negotiations with Civil Service Employees Association, Local 1000 AFS-CME, AFL-CIO, matters regarding the negotiations of an easement, matters regarding a retainer, matters regarding the purchasing policy, and we have several matters of litigation, the Town of Riverhead versus Walter Gabrielson et al., Riverhead Central School District and Town of Riverhead versus Culinary Arts Riverhead, and matters relating to fire safety concerns and code violations. So we will now enter into our executive session. Thank you.
I don't know that the first item is an executive session item, discussion regarding a possible contract.